scrutiny and be held in the open so that the public know exactly what's going on. This is a real important issue that needs to be addressed at this point, and now we just need to get this tribunal underway.
1 in 10 Irish pharmacies is now losing money, with rural community chemists more dramatically affected. That's the key message from the Fitzgerald Power report on pharmacies, which highlights the need for an increase in the dispensing fee. The fee is what pharmacists charge when filling a prescription to cover the costs of storing and preparing medication. President of the Irish Pharmacy Union, Dermot Timmy, outlines the main findings of the report.
1 in 10 pharmacies, community pharmacies, are loss-making currently, and a further 35% have an operating profit of less than 10%. So really what we're seeing is that many pharmacies into the future will be unviable unless there's a change in the core dispensing fee that the state pay for the core services. And this is something that we're looking to sit down with the Minister and the Department to discuss this going forward.
A Ukrainian MP says the country's president is feeling positive about a counter-offensive against Russia. That's despite Moscow claiming it successfully repelled Ukrainian attacks on the front line over the last number of days. Meanwhile, in the city of Kherson, the average water level is coming down after flooding caused by the destruction of the Nova Kakhovka Dam, but it is still 15 feet higher than normal. Ukrainian MP Maria Metsventseva blames Vladimir Putin for the catastrophe.
Possibly Russian army and their commander Putin tried to stop the liberation operation on the Ukrainian side by creating this disaster, man-made disaster.
Finally, for now, 70% of people have rivalries with their neighbour for the best garden. A new poll from Argus found that 1 in 10 have admitted to being jealous of other people's gardens, with 60% spying over the fence for some inspiration. The Sunday Mirror reports that inviting people round for an outdoor barbecue is the top motivator for keeping gardens in tip-top shape. That's your news at 2:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Can Rory win the British Open? Support him live in July with Ryanair's daily flights to Liverpool.
Another warm, humid and cloudy day is in store. Spells of hazy sunshine will break through later, with top temperatures reaching 19 to 24 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now you welcome back. So 15 minutes gone at the Gaelic grounds. Limerick started well, scored the opening 2 points, but it's Clare who lead by 6 points to 3. 15 minutes gone. James O'Connor is there. Not the first time, I suspect, or the last time that the lead will change hands. Early impressions, Jamesy?
Yeah, it's Joe, you could cut the tension with a knife here. It's just so tense. You know, you can sense from the crowd how big a game this feels for both teams. Yeah, Limerick, 2-0 up. Tom Morrissey got the first score after Diarmaid Burns should have been pinged for 3 catches. The type of mistake really that Liam Gordon shouldn't be making at this level. So they got the ball up the field to Morrissey. He got their first score after Glan had an early wide. Limerick have certainly tried to hit the full forward line early on without a whole lot of joy, I would say. Glan has done reasonably well. He's been out in front of Keane Nolan. He was fouled a minute ago for a free, Joe, that he just outside the 45 that I couldn't understand why he didn't take himself. He called Burns up and Burns actually missed it. Now he's just after taking one and converting one from a similar position to narrow the deficit. Clare 6-4 to the good. Shane O'Donnell has scored. Tony Kelly got his first point on 13 minutes. Kelly on the ball again now here. Takes a hard tackle from Tom Morrissey. But Clare certainly in the game, you sense. And this, Joe, if it continues like this is going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, bubbling nicely. Thank you, Jamesy.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're welcome along to the Sunday Papers. So very happy to say we're joined live here in studio by Cliodhna O'Connor, who coaches in the worlds of GAA and Irish hockey, and we have Timmy McCarthy as well, former Irish basketball captain and coach. You're there, Timmy. How you doing?
Good, Joe. How are you?
Great, thanks. Cliodhna, good to have you in studio. Thanks for popping in. So I'll just give people a general sense of the back pages. 3 guesses what the lead is. It's Manchester City right across the board. So the Mail on Sunday, first of all, history makers, lots of photographs from last night, the main one being Rodri after he scored the only goal of the game. So Manchester City 1, Inter Milan 0. And beneath that on the Mail on Sunday, this story as well across the papers. Ireland boss Vera Pauw set to sign new deal ahead of World Cup. So she was talking to the media this week and she was asked if there is a good chance she may sign a contract extension before the team fly out to Australia on July the 8th. And she said, "We are talking." Pauw smiled, says Mark Gallagher here. "We're talking and I hope so, but we'll see." We have the Sunday Independent then. It's a picture of Rodri sliding on his knees after that goal. City delight as Rodri strikes sees Pep's side seal historic treble. And David Heitner writing the story beneath. The long road from League One ends in Euro glory in Istanbul. That almost makes them sound like plucky underdogs, which isn't quite the feeling, I think. But to be fair, League One wasn't a million years ago either. The Sun party like it's 1999. Again, it's that picture of Rodri. Pictures alongside of Pep Guardiola blowing kisses to the crowd and Erling Haaland screaming to the sky at full time and joy. And then Sunday Mirror Sport, treble yell. Guardiola finally gets his hands on Holy Grail as City win Champions League for third trophy of the season. Pictures of Grealish and Rodri and Haaland and Guardiola on the back page. So very much leading the way. Cliodhna, I know you watched highlights. I don't think, Timmy, if you watched the full 90, she missed a huge amount.
I watched the full 90, Joe, and it was a very poor game in reality. I thought Inter played well. They set up their stall and they stayed with it. They just, had a couple of big chances. Lukaku had a big chance and stopped another chance. There was a deflection on the ball back from Gundogan back to Rodri, which kind of helped the ball fall into Rodri's face. So overall, I thought it was a poor game of football. I thought maybe sometimes finals are. It looked like two teams were under enormous pressure. When I watched the cup final last week between City and United, Joe, I thought City were poor in that game. I said, if City play like this last night in the Champions League final, they'd find it hard to get over the line. And they did play as poorly as that. And they got the goal, they got the breakthrough, obviously, and they got the victory. But I thought they were a far crying out for the team that, demolished some of the other big names along the way to this final. So, Tina, I don't believe you missed an off that. Even if you got many highlights, I'm not sure there was too many highlights for you to watch.
What's your general sense of the City story this season, Cliodhna?
Yeah, I think it's kind of reflected in the pieces today. I think everyone's a bit can acknowledge the I suppose the flair, the quality, all of that stuff. But even today, when you're reading the papers, it is a little bit flat, isn't it? It's a bit of it's kind of the same thing again. And like Jonathan Northcroft's piece in the Sunday Times opens talking about how the thing that Pep values over everything else is consistency. Now, as a spectator, as just a general observer of soccer, for me, consistency gets a little boring at times. But in one sense, isn't it amazing, and the longevity of all the success? And then the other bit, it's a bit boring now, isn't it? So it's a funny. I think for someone who isn't a diehard City fan, it's a funny response. Or I find myself mixed emotions about it. I can appreciate some of it, but the other bit, I'm like, a bit more exciting would be great.
Yes, I think everybody, Timmy, has that like intellectual appreciation for the brilliance of Pep and the brilliance of City, and yet when it comes to whatever emotion they elicit, there is, I don't know, a certain flatness, I would say, anecdotally and even across talking to people and even across the pages, and not to mention the small matter of 115 charges looming over the whole operation.
And as Tina said, I think that comes across in a couple of the pieces. The flatness is sort of because they were expected to win it. It was sort of like, they're going to win it. This is just going to happen. And sport is not really what that's about at times. You like to get to final and believe that somebody else has a chance in that sense. I thought what I thought was interesting in Norcroft's piece, though, was I didn't realise that they're now the fourth all-time leading successful team in England. Like, that's an astonishing achievement, Joe, in the 15 years since they've been taken over. Like they're now fourth behind United, Liverpool, and Arsenal. I didn't realise they had won that many trophies. And it's funny, during the year, my grandson Cathal is an Arsenal fan for us, and the rest of us are all Chelsea fans, as you well know. And during the year, there was a view sort of from us in the family here and the other grandchildren. Well, if City win, we don't care, because they just have all the money and all the player. And I think that was actually what came across last night. If City won the Champions League, nobody really cared, because there was no love about it, there was no affection about it, there was no excitement about it. And as I said earlier, they didn't play well, but it was just they have all this money, they can buy all the players they want. They bought Haaland, and he just sort of got them to the next step. And and the big point is, I think in the piece, Rob Draper's, his piece, I think in the Mail on Sunday, talked about their journey from laughing stock to the Kings of Europe as the headline. And you think about their journey, that from 2008 to 2013, but there's big question marks. There's these 115 charges that the FA are either slow to respond to or finding themselves in legal difficulties trying to respond to that. There was the UEFA fine that they got, I think it was 10 million at the time. So there's big question marks over City, and more than any other team, who has had benefactors of this sort. There's big question marks about, have they played, within the rules of the game? And I think the challenge for the UEFA and for the Premier League is, how serious are they going to take on them if they have broken the rules? Will they take back the trophies? You can never take off the treble now. They've won the treble, and even if you take back the trophies, they've won the treble. But I do believe that there was just a sense of inevitability. I was listening to Jamesy talk earlier on there about the Clare Limerick game, and there's a sense of excitement, there's a sense of not knowing where we're going, even though Limerick are favourites, but who could Clare pull it off in that sense? There was none of that last night. And that wasn't just because it was soccer. There was just none of it because City came into it as overwhelmingly favourites, and when they won it, even I was flicking between RT and between BT, and even when they won it, even the British commentators in BT couldn't really muster up a lot of excitement, which they normally would have for British teams. Obviously,
I don't know. I thought in places they went a bit OTT. Their lead commentator described it as the greatest story in club football history, and now it has its ending. I thought, what? The greatest what?
Yeah, no, I didn't hear that, but it's not the greatest story. I mean, Leicester winning the league. Leicester winning the league was a great story.
Yeah, I think he was leaning into that League One aspect and not acknowledging what's happened since 2008. Like, it is, again, it's hard to be swept away when it cuts to their owner, who's at his second ever Manchester City game. This isn't like Jack Walker in tears when Blackburn win the league. And on the charges against them, in Rob Draper's piece, which just takes the angle of charting City from 2008 to 2023, he harks back to that UEFA investigation and that famous line from Al Mubarak, who really is driving things more so than Sheikh Mansour, it must be said, to be fair to him, only attending 2 games. I don't think he's ever claimed to be wholly invested in the day-to-day fortunes, but at the time City's legal counsel had wrote that Al Mubarak had said he would rather spend £30 million sterling on the best 50 lawyers in the world and sue UEFA for the next 10 years than agree to a financial penalty. Now in the end they paid the financial penalty, but akin to the PIF grinding down the PGA Tour, City have no problem, if they need to, in grinding down UEFA with 10 years of very expensive lawyers. The interesting I suppose proposition looking forward is Jonathan Northcroft's piece, where mentions Guardiola, who's contracted to 2025. This is a man who has now won 33 major honours after 15 years, and Northcroft really is making the argument that City could catch up on the likes of Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal very quickly and start stockpiling European silverware very quickly. It's inconceivable that they'll catch Liverpool or United in Premier League terms anytime soon for obvious reasons, but in Europe they really could. And he says, excluding group stage dead rubbers, they've lost only 4 Champions League matches in 4 seasons. They've reached 2 finals, semi-final and a quarter-final, and effectively they've finished off their progression at this level. The Bernabeu maybe last year, those few minutes of madness being the final lesson, and since then they have comfortably beaten, since 2020 and 2021, beaten Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, PSG, Inter Milan. There are no longer any continental European teams who hold the slightest mystique or fear for them. PSG and Bayern are at the end of cycles and in the middle of messes. Barcelona and Atletico are even further back. Real Madrid have the challenge of replacing Karim Benzema. So he says it feels that, Real apart, the sides likeliest to thwart City in Europe in the near future will come from the Premier League. But those Champions League slip-ups against Spurs in 19 and Liverpool in 18 belong to an earlier stage of this Man City team's development under Guardiola. And with 5 English titles in 6 seasons, City should be favourites to win any All-England tie. In short, Manchester City are peaking in Europe at the exact moment when the conditions are right for a prolonged period of domination. Rather than the end of their Champions League quest, Istanbul may be the start. It's a pretty convincing argument that the Champions League is very difficult to win, notwithstanding. City are in a great position, really, as long as Guardiola wants to stick around.
But it seems like they have a good recipe, doesn't it? When you lay it out like that, and you look at the profile of their squad, and also their calling card of consistency. So it doesn't matter if we've done it already. We just want more and more and more. And can you back it up? Can you do it again? That seems to be in the DNA already. Yeah. So it does seem that, like, why, as long as Pep wants to be there, like, why couldn't it continue? There doesn't seem to be any major obstacle given the current situation or scenario.
Yeah. The Oliver Brown piece in the Telegraph, and it's also in the Sunday Independent, it takes the route of acknowledging the 115 charges and acknowledging the 2 billion spent during the last 7 years, but then does dedicate the rest of the column to actually saying we do have to give Guardiola enormous credit here. He deserves so much better than just to be seen as the figurehead for some colossal corporate vanity project. And I think that's right, because you may have misgivings about some of Guardiola's personal behaviour. You absolutely may have misgivings about some of City's spending. But what this guy has done and is doing over the last 15 years is absolutely extraordinary. Most of the footballing world is copying his style of play. He comes up with innovations totally, which in retrospect we analyse and make sense of, but he's dreaming these things up. He's looking at John Stones and he's looking at Haaland and he's saying, do you know what? Let's leave the 4-3-3 I've spent my career playing, and let's go with 3 at the back and a box of 4, you 2 on the wings, Haaland up front. And it all makes sense when we see it laid out, but I mean, he's dreaming this up. Nobody was saying this is what City should do before he came up with it. And you know, this style of football isn't going to work. Still a lot of very respected pundits when he arrived in England, Timmy. So you do kind of have to genuflect at now 3-time Champions League winner, 2 times a treble winner with 2 different sides, and say, certainly of my lifetime, he's the best coach I've ever seen, with due respect to Ancelotti's 4 Champions League wins, and you've seen, you know, a few decades more than I have, I suspect, but it is kind of exceptional what Guardiola is doing, and we can kind of take it for granted in amongst the controversy.
There's no doubt it's exceptional, and I think when you talk about, you know, he had a big monkey on his back last night. He had never won a Champions League without Messi. You know, and that was a big issue, you know, in the background, Joe, because, you know, he went to Bayern Munich and obviously the big ambition was to win, and he didn't do it there. He had failed with City up to last night. So, you know, there was a lot of talk that he hadn't the talent, which was unfair, to do without Messi. But there was an interesting piece in the Norco piece. He says, whether you perceive it as bought or earned, to be enjoyed or endured, it's threat or just another rich club enjoying success, the same way rich clubs have throughout football's history. It's not credible to deny the genius of Guardiola or potent beauty of his football. And you made a point. He has evolved the game. I can remember being at Chelsea when Mourinho came in, and Mourinho brought 4-3-3 into England, okay? And then Ferguson adjusted a year or two later. But Ferguson never really evolved the game, and Ferguson was an exceptionally successful manager, obviously. I know many United fans may not like this, but he never evolved the game. You know, he had a structure in the system, and he followed, you know, the evolution of the game. Guardiola is evolving the game. He's creating, you know, new structures, new systems, and yet he's staying very true to what he believes. And, you know, seeing his point earlier, consistency is the big thing for him. Consistency in how quickly they win back the ball, consistency in, you know, how they create opportunities, you know, consistency in how they defend as a unit from corners and from set pieces. He really is into the minutiae detail, and that's what separates him. And, you know, in my view, he's the best club manager I've ever seen. There's no doubts in that. And when Mourinho came to Chelsea first, he was exceptional. As I said, he brought in 4-3-3, Duff and Robin and Drogba. It was exciting. And then he changed fundamentally, became a defensive, you know, focused coach and played with fear. Guardiola's never had his team play with fear. They play with an expression. They express themselves. Yeah, they've got the talent. There's no question in that. And, you know, despite the fact that he has, you know, practically the best squad in the world, he has practically many of the best players in the world, not necessarily all of the best players, but many of the best players in each of the positions in the world. He allows them play within his system, which I really love as a coach. He allows them play within his system and express their individuality. And I think that's really what coaches need to do. They need to allow, in any sport, GAA, rugby, soccer, whatever, basketball, allow people express their individuality within the structure of the system. And Guardiola has evolved the system and has done that and deserves the plaudits that he gets. You know, as you said, he's won 2 trebles in 2 different clubs. he's come into England, and despite all the money they've had, he's got his team over the line at a time where they'd kind of gone off the boil in the last few weeks. After they won the Premiership, they kind of gone off the boil. He got him over the line, and he deserves all the plaudits that he gets. And he's not stopped it. There's no questions. They'll go out and buy new players. They'll go out and make sure that they strengthen the squad. And that was one of the great strengths of Liverpool in the 80s and United in the 90s. They always strengthen their squad when they're on top. City will do the same. And the danger for in a European sense is that they could, win 6 European Cups. This team could go on and win 6 European Cups, or 3 or 4 European Cups. They've got that talent. Real Madrid have shown they've got the expertise and they've got the legacy. And City could create that legacy under Guardiola if he stays. And that's the big question in the future.
Because, Cliodhna, I don't know how often in your fields of coaching, be it GAA or the Irish hockey team or beyond, that you watch a performance from a team and you say, oh, that's new. I've never in 2023 really seen that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare because everyone's kind of building and tweaking, and every now and then something new comes along. I mean, the big one in GAA was, Jim McGuinness and Donegal. To me, that was the biggest shift in how people approach the games. But since then, have we really seen a huge amount? Then you had, I suppose, how to counteract that and how to deal with that type of defence. But it's always small pieces that have been in the ether for a while. But it's very rare that you have somebody who comes along and says, okay, I'm going to do something totally different here, because it's risky, and it takes an innovator to be able to look at the game differently, because you play it safe, you play certainty, you play the stats, this is what we know, we won't do anything too drastic,
Because it's interesting, I heard Gareth Southgate talking recently, and he was asked, it was at the League Managers Association Awards, and Guardiola yet again was Manager of the Year, and Southgate was asked about the effect Guardiola has had on football, or even on English football, and he was saying, to be honest, that some of the talent I'm working with now, when they were 9 and 10, their dads were watching Guardiola's Barcelona play out from the back repeatedly, and they started doing that, and so I've been gifted, a generation who've been doing it since they were 8-9 and have watched Guardiola's Barcelona do it since they were 8-9. When he first started doing it, people thought he was insane.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the maverick coaches who do things differently, and then all of a sudden, the minute it works, everyone jumps on it.
Well, I mean, the imitation is off the charts, isn't it?
Yeah. But you have that in every sport, and in sports science and everything. You look over the fence. What are they doing? Oh, they won something. Therefore, that is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah.
And then, but somebody like him will find a new innovation, because somebody else will challenge his style or bring something to the table, and he'll have to look at it differently again. It will happen.
Well, that's Manchester City, so they are treble winners, not the dramatics of 99, almost a more sophisticated opposition at arm's length type win than do or die moments and last minute winners, which is maybe less heart stopping but more impressive in many ways. We'll take a very short break. Timmy and Cliodhna staying with us. We'll check in with Jamesy O'Connor on the far side of the break. Clare are 4 points to the good in the Munster Hurling final, just on the cusp of half time.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Okay, everyone, the News Talk Summer Tour is back and we're hitting the road. Now, has everyone got their seatbelts on?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Now, I'm broadcasting from Galway, so maybe take the M6.
I'm broadcasting from Cork, so just go down
And
the
what
M8.
about me?
Hold on.
I'm in
We've
Wicklow and
Louth and
Dublin.
Cork to get to.
Stop fighting right now or I'm going to turn this car around.
Sorry.
The News Talk Summer Tour. Check out newstalk.com/summer tour to see the official roadmap.
Are we there yet?
Make this a summer to really remember with Go Breaks. We can't guarantee the weather, but we can guarantee amazing value hotel breaks. From family getaways to romantic hideaways, we have it all. With deals from just €105 per night. Or if you're thinking Mediterranean, then check out our huge selection of incredible hotel deals across Europe. Go experience. Go explore this summer with Go Breaks. As recommended by News Talk. Go Breaks. T's and C's at gobreaks.ie.
InsureMyVan.ie. Hi, I'm Ken Doherty. For all van drivers and business owners, InsureMyVan.ie is Ireland's low-cost van and commercial insurance specialist. For high-quality van and all commercial insurances, call InsureMyVan.ie.
City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremyvan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Now is the time to experience all-electric driving for yourself with the Volkswagen Experience Electric Sales Event from the 9th to the 17th of June at your local Volkswagen retailer. Discover our all-electric cars, charging solutions, government incentives, and our latest market-leading 232 offers. Plus, test drive the Volkswagen ID range, Ireland's best-selling all-electric cars, available for immediate delivery at your local Volkswagen retailer. Search Volkswagen ID. Volkswagen. Best-selling claim based on latest published figures.
We have your van. The Opel commercial vehicle range. Get the job done effectively, effortlessly, and with the efficiency of a pro. High-tech connectivity, high-volume payloads, and unrivaled comfort and safety. The Opel commercial range's versatility suits any business. Discover more about the Opel Movano, Vivaro, or Combo Cargo at the Opel Open Road event. We have your van. Test drive your van today at your local Opel dealer.
Thinking of selling your home? A Daft Advantage ad is the best way for you to guarantee unbeatable visibility on Ireland's #1 property website, attracting more buyers and getting you the best price for your home. Ask your estate agent for a Daft Advantage ad today.
Welcome to Tesco Mobile.
Our prepaid plans give you more freedom. Top up by €15 a month and get more data than you need. But that's not all. You'll also get 1,000 any network minutes, 500 any network texts, and unlimited calls and texts to Tesco Mobile customers. Now that's a sweet deal. This is Supermarket Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps. T's and C's apply. A minimum top up of €15 required every 28 days. See tescomobile.ie for further details.
From the 1st of July, the government is cutting their electric car grant by 30%. But don't worry, the new Aura Funky Cat has got your back. Just buy before the end of July and Aura will make the grant whole again with a contribution of €1,500 or a lower monthly finance rate. Because that's what Carpanions are for. With immediate delivery available, buy from your local Aura Funky Cat dealer and read the full T's and C's at aura-ev.ie.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
You're welcome back. Let's get over to the Gaelic rounds. James O'Connor is there, so we make it Clare 111, Limerick 11 points, half time.
Yeah, tense first half, Joe. I mean, again, back and forth. Clare led at 1.74 after Mike Hasty picked up a yellow for some persistent holding on Peter Duggan, so that means he's on watching. At the other end, Keane Nolan again picked up a yellow on 28 minutes for something similar on the other end of Galan, and that's not what you want, your full back line to be. But the key scorer of the game, I suppose, Joe, Clare were 10-8 up. Galan again, who's been Limerick's main scoring threat, he's got 7 of their 11 scores, 5 coming from frees, and he's been fouled for some of those frees. He's been out in front, got really good ball, but Keane Nolan by and large has stood up well. So Clare, as I said, up 1. Then Kyle Hayes got a great score, that levelled at a 10-all, and then the crucial score of the game, Tony Kelly picked up, I think, the puck out in the middle of the field, went for a shot from distance. It came off the upright and into the hand of Mark Rogers. Dan Morrissey, nothing he could do. And if from a Clare perspective, the one Clare player you wanted on the ball in that situation is Rogers, because he's a finisher, one-handed, flash it to the net past Nicky Quaid, and the roof nearly came off this place. Clare got the next score then to stretch the lead to 4 after an Aidan McCarthy point. And after that then Clare, Ryan Taylor had a terrible wide that he should really have knocked over, and shortly after that came through the middle and could have tapped it over the bar again, but since there was a bit more on, into Rogers. He shot probably from an angle, Joe, just outside the 14, hit it into the deck, but didn't really test Nicky Quaid. Nicky pulled off a good save and Limerick managed to clear their lines and get it away. So Clare, probably 3 ahead at the break, could conceivably be 4 or 5, and at the same time you got to concede they got the break for the goal with that ball coming off the post and Mark Rogers onto it in a flash into the back of the net. So that's what separates the sides, Joe. From a Limerick perspective, I mean, Morrissey's got 1 from play, hasn't really been in the game. Hagerty 1 from play, not really in the game. Seamus Flanagan hasn't scored. Graham O'Cahey hasn't done a whole lot. Dermot Burns hasn't scored, and Clare doing a lot of things right, but they've dropped a few short. They've had 6 wides to Limerick's 5, and possibly could be a little bit further ahead. But Joe, very much all to play for, delicately, boys, here in the Gaelic grounds. points, Clare won 11, Limerick 11 points.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Jamesy. And your worries about the Clare full back line going okay?
Yeah, listen, the worry is Nolan's on a yellow card now, and I mean Gillane obviously will look to take him on and look to ask those questions, so I don't know whether Brian maybe considers making a change there, maybe switching Adam Hogan over, but he's done very well because there's been plenty of space in front of Gillane, the ball in has been super, he's tried to be out there with him, getting a Hurley in. I thought he was a little bit unlucky maybe to get the card, but then you could say the same thing with Peter Casey or Mike Casey at the other end on Duggan. Again, I think Brian, certainly like the last thing you want, Joe, in that position is that with an ocean of space is a yellow card, and obviously the fear that you commit another foul and you're gone, so that's a big concern, and Brian might look to adjust things there, maybe even getting Nolan onto Graham Mulcahy. He wasn't really been in the game, but Adam Hogan has done really well there, so I think Clare would be very, very happy. They haven't really looked like scoring a goal, Limerick, and by and large Rory Hayes has done very, very, very well on Flanagan on the other side, so a lot of things going right for Clare, but you just you can't not take these opportunities against Limerick when you have the chance, and Clare, as I said, have dropped a few short, and they've maybe they should have tapped one or two over that they may rue at the end of this, but all in all in a good position at half time, 3 to the good.
Okay, very good, Jamesy, thank you. So Clare won 11, Limerick 11 points at the Gaelic grounds. We're reviewing the Sunday papers. Cliodhna O'Connor here in studio, who coaches in the worlds of GAA and Irish hockey. Timmy McCarthy, Irish basketball captain and coach as well in his time. Let's turn to pages 16 and 17 of the Sunday Independent, because this is potentially a monumental development in Irish football and Irish sport. Dan McDonald here is looking at the FAI's facility investment and vision strategy, which sounds terribly boring but is actually very interesting. So the FAI have at last got their act together, and they have put together a document which is evidence-based, and it lays out a plan for the future, and they've marched into Leinster House and said, we need 863 million. And this is what we're going to do with it. And Dan McDonald starts his piece by saying that he got a message from an elected member of Leinster House on Thursday evening. And the message from that senator or TD was, the FAI, this is a message to Dan, by the way, not necessarily a public statement. The FAI have stopped apologising for themselves. It's ballsy. Here's our plan. This is the state of the place. This is the price tag to fix it. Here's how you can give us the money. They've gone political, and it's long overdue. Like, such an interesting message, even that alone. We'll get into the specifics in a moment, but clearly there was a sense, if that TD or senator is speaking on behalf of any portion of Leinster House, there's a sense that the FAI were never serious about coming forward and saying, here's the plan, give it to us, this is what we need. And almost this is the first time that the FAI have put on their grown-up pants and decided to behave like a proper organisation.
I think so. Well, I think they it seemed to me that the FAI always thought they could just do their own thing. They can just, we're over here and we're a little bit separate and we'll just manage our own affairs. But there seems to be an honesty with this strategy that, but I guess they've had all their dirty laundry aired out in public anyway. So there's no secrets anymore. So now they've had to come forward and say, right, this is a mess, this is what we need, this is what it's going to cost now. Like every other governing body in the country, can you help us? And maybe there's a bit of humility needed to come and say, we need help to sort this out. And it seems like people would find that a little bit refreshing. Yeah. We everybody wants football to do well. Of course we do. It's a good sport, and as a country we like football. So why wouldn't we want to help? Presuming all ducks are in a row and they're doing the right thing. Of course we would.
And it would give you faith, I think, if that amount of money is handed over, that it will be scrutinised by a centralised body, be it the government or elsewhere. So it's, a kind of further monitoring of what's going on with the FAI, which mightn't be a bad thing. Dan McDonald writes, everything in the John Delaney era was an illusion, a product of the weak leadership, shorn of the confidence to admit that things needed to be better, largely because it might have highlighted the extent to which they were failing. That's why the refreshing element of this facility scheme is that it points out just how bad things are on the ground. The strongest section concentrated on the facts, and so the piece pointed out that the Tallaght Stadium aside, League of Ireland stadiums haven't moved on from the 1990s really. Turner's Cross, the only other venue to meet a respectable European standard. Most grassroots clubs don't own their own base. A quarter of clubs aren't even eligible to apply for sports grants, and 38% lack a functioning female toilet. 38%.
She was all smoke and mirrors, Joe. You know, it was based on this.
I thought it'd be a jacks out the back. Yeah. Do you know? I mean,
broken door.
I'm not saying it was female friendly at every turn, but just a toilet.
Yeah, there you go. Like that's reality. And then again, clubs not eligible to apply for all those sports grants. There's so many things you have to have in place to be eligible. They can't even apply. That's how far behind the curve they are on grassroots level. It's so in contrast to what we've been made believe for the past 10 or 20 years.
Yeah. Dan says that there is like an occasional oasis in the desert across Irish football where you come across a good club, but he says that just brings back memories of the FAI's Festival of Football years, which he says was an orgy of novelty check writing that perpetuated the myth that all was well in Ireland's football family. And he goes on to say that the findings of this FAI report won't surprise anybody. The FAI's plan recommends solutions. It proposes methods of funding. In many respects, the top line figure is the 517 million requested from the government over the 15 years, so an average of 34 million per annum, although that's front loaded very, very heavily. And it stresses as well there'll be like a multi-sport use aspect, and that's a smart tactic in his opinion. League of Ireland Stadia, 250 million required there. He says that will need more explanation. And a final point, Robert Watt, who is Secretary General of the Department of Health, and to be fair has been a contentious figure in Irish life in recent times, but he is on the board of the FAI, and Dan says that allows that board to ask the right questions in the right places. Much as he is a contentious figure in Irish public life at the moment, he still comes armed with knowledge and expertise which will surely be of benefit to this plan. So Dan finishes by saying that "this is football's time" is the slogan, and it could just as easily have been called "it's about time." So Timmy, I think everybody's encouraged by just the transparency and the grown-up nature of the FAI laying it all out. This is what we need. It's a huge sum of money, but here's why we need it. Up to you, government, as opposed to, well, I don't know how you want to characterise the previous 30, 40 years, but it wasn't this.
Well, I think there's a couple of points that Dan called out that are very important in the context of how this has been framed by the FAI. First of all, he called out the strongest section concentrated on the facts. And in the second last paragraph, he said he succeeded in focusing away from personalities and back onto the plight of the people who play and support the game. And I just thought those two comments really is the nub of this. I mean, obviously the money is, we get the highlights, 863 million and 570 million over 15 years. That's a lot of cash. That's a lot of money that they're looking for in that sense. But I love the fact that what they've called out is, they've done a professional job. They're dealing with facts, not dealing with illusions or emotions. They're just dealing with the facts of what the game needs over the next 15 years. And it needs investment. For a sport that is, a huge sport in this country and obviously internationally in that sense. And if we don't put the investment in, then, we end up with situations where, you don't have functioning female toilets. You don't have subsequent private grants. So you get what you pay for ultimately in this sense. So those two lines to me were really important in Dan's piece that he called out, that is based on, not based on personalities, but on the people and the people who support it, and based on facts. The other thing I thought was fascinating was they had the courage to call out the big numbers. Because if you look at the FAI and the PR that they've got over the last number of years and how they've handled their business in the Delaney era, and the financial mess that was created at different points in time, to come out, with a doc with 85-page game plan and to say we need almost $1 billion, euros, is really kind of, takes a lot of courage. Takes a lot of courage when you consider where they're coming from in that sense. So I thought to myself, I don't know the detail exactly, obviously, Joe, but reading Dan's piece, what it did was made a point that, this is good for football. Now, whether the politicians get on board or whether they get the funding, that's the journey that they have to undertake in that sense. But it's good for football because it's saying to everybody involved in football, League of Ireland clubs and obviously the FAI and other clubs, you've got to get your act together. We're no longer going to be second-class citizens. If we really want the game to be top class, well, then we have to invest. We have to get the government to invest, but we have to invest. And we have to make sure that, we have facilities and we have structures that allow us become eligible for grants and become part of a world that, that everybody can go in and enjoy the spectacle of soccer, in facilities and that are appropriate. And I think the other point you called out, it's multi-sport. I think one of the big questions in this country is the lack of municipal sporting venues. If you look at the continent, the amount of municipal sporting venues where they can play a range of sports, where we tend to be singular sports in the main, even though I know there's been some crossover in the last couple of years for big events. But in general, GAA playing GAA pitches, rugby playing rugby pitches, soccer playing soccer pitches. So the fact that multi-sport is part of their strategic thought process, I think will win them a lot of friends and give the politicians a chance to support it because of the multi-sport aspect. So I was very impressed with it, Joe, from what I read about it, and I thought Dan's piece captured it very succinctly in the end.
In the Mail on Sunday, there's a slightly different focus to Phillips Quinn's piece on this strategic launch. So he says, deep into the second half of the FAI's 15-year investment spiel in Abbottstown on Thursday, Jonathan Hill was briefly rattled. Up to then, the CEO had been foot perfect until he was asked about why there was no primary sponsor for men's football. It's 3 years since Three Disconnected was brought up by the Mail Sport, and Hill bristled, writes Philip Quinn. So he says, rather than acknowledge the glaring hole in the FAI family of blue chip sponsors, he looked to gloss over the omission. He became bullish, says Philip Quinn, about the new kit sponsorship contract, and he said that was worth more than the Three and the Umbro kit deals combined. The FAI still doesn't have a primary sponsor, and that counts against Hill, who will be 3 years in the job in October, says Philip Quinn. And he then goes on to note as well, Hill has done a decent job at the helm, but the absence of a name on the sports and leisure wear on Stephen Kenny and his coaching staff and the Ireland players ahead of Friday's qualifier against Greece is not a good look. Is Hill holding out for too much? Possibly. Is he finding Stephen Kenny's Ireland a hard sell? Possibly. And then he notes as well that really Stephen Kenny isn't across much of the 86-page brochure. So he says that Vera Pauw was praised, the Ireland underage teams too, the full houses at League of Ireland grounds, but Kenny was the invisible man. His photo was nowhere to be seen in the FAI's glossy 86-page brochure. Pauw's was, Katie McCabe was even more prominent. Denise O'Sullivan got a full page, as did the Ireland women's team too. Chidozie Ogbene was the lead photo on one page and appeared elsewhere along with Gambazzuno and McCabe. Why was Kenny missing? Perhaps there was a clue earlier when Jonathan Hill said that 2024 in practical terms was likely the starting point of the timeline for investment. Are the FAI preparing for a 2024 without Kenny? Is that why he was omitted from the document? Omitting the Ireland manager from such a groundbreaking charter certainly appears more than a little strange. Cliodhna, if you were Stephen Kenny, would you be reading into that?
Probably. Well, I think soccer managers read into everything, don't they? It's the nature of the game. But I think it seems to be like the FAI, they're going potentially a different route with this. They need to rebrand themselves or reimagine or reposition themselves. So again, in Dan McDonald's piece, they're talking about they're convincing numbers around participation, popularity with new communities, health and societal benefits. So they're not talking about the senior men's team. Why is it that they don't believe in it? Is it a hard sell? I don't really know, but you can rationalise why they wouldn't. And it's, what are they putting front and centre in all their flagship document? It's the women's team, it's their various young up and coming players, it's their different communities. That's what they're talking. That's what they want people to talk about. They seem to want to divert attention away. They don't from the men's team. They don't want to talk about the fact that they have no sponsor. That's really not great if you don't have a title sponsor for that team. And you can see why they're doing it. But it does raise other questions, I think, about where they're going to invest all potential sponsorship that they get or funding that they get. What are they actually going to do with it?
Yeah. Stephen Kenny, Timmy, is surely a good story to tell, though, in many ways. He is of the League of Ireland. He did brilliant things with the League of Ireland team. He's graduated to the senior team. He has brought through an entire generation of young players. They had a very respectable draw against France just this year. I mean, I actually think it's a strange move to almost omit him from this document. Would they, if they were paying some, I don't know, I don't want to pick any nationality in particular, but if they're paying like a foreign manager who's never been to a League of Ireland game in his life $2 million to look over the men's national side, is that, you know, a great story to tell? I find the omission of Kenny here very strange. Like, do they back him or do they not?
But did they not know how to sell it? They don't know how to sell. That's a kind of, oh yeah, he's doing well, and he is when you lay it all out. But is that a marketable piece for them? Is that something that they can really sell? I don't know. They should be able to.
I think across 86 pages, maybe.
Yeah, maybe one paragraph.
Quick set. Really. What do you think, Timmy? Would you be reading into that if you were Kenny?
I'd read into it. I definitely would read into it for a number of reasons. First of all, you know, if you think of their strategic plan, there's a big focus on the League of Ireland, and as you just called out, his relationship with the League of Ireland, you know, is a success in the sense of his success in the league, and now the fact that he's the national manager in that sense. Secondly, he called out, you know, about the fact the team needs to qualify for more tournaments. So that he pinned that firmly on Kenny at that point in time, in that sense. And I thought the thing about the sponsorship, the fact that he didn't actually just deal with the fact that they don't have a title sponsor, and that's something that he needs to address as the chief executive. It was really sort of lacking courage, in my view, from his perspective. But from Kenny's perspective, there's no doubt. So if you have an 86-page document, and yes, the women are going to the World Cup, so they should get, you know, pride and praise because that's the next tournament that Ireland will play in, you know, in the sense of the final stages. That should be front and centre. But not to have your current men's national manager front and centre of this document, you know, is baffling because, you know, I know you were thinking of names, Joe, but, you know, go back to Jack Charlton. Are you telling me if Jack Charlton was manager of the Irish team today, he wouldn't be front and centre of that document, you know, to increase the credibility of the document? So I believe that from Kenny's point of view, that there's no doubts that the focus is getting to the Euros, obviously, in that sense, from the FAI and from Kenny's point of view. But you have to question, is Hill committed in the long term for Kenny?
Yeah, because it's funny when I was struggling to think of a name, it's weird. Big Sam just popped into my head. So I don't know, if you're going to government and saying we're trying to become very self-sufficient and develop young players, and here we have a League of Ireland manager who's come through and done great things in Europe and is now bringing a next generation through, you know, that is a good story to sell if you're looking for taxpayers' money, as opposed to there's Big Sam, we pay him £3 million a year, isn't that great? You know, like, so I think there's a lot to, even if you're being cynical about it, to point to if you're looking for taxpayers' money with Kenny.
There's no doubts in that, and I Joe, that, you know, when you think of Stephen Kenny, where he's come from, as we talked about earlier, and he's Irish, you know, he's not a Big Sam who pops in and just, you know,
all due respect to Big Sam, of course.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you know, and that's why I mentioned Jack Charlton, because Jack obviously had a successful.
Yeah, or throwing millions at Trapattoni, who did a fine job. But again, like, Kenny's a better story to tell.
So why aren't they?
Why aren't they?
Why aren't they then?
Well,
I believe Hill is not. I believe Joe Hill is not convinced.
Yeah.
I believe Hill is not convinced. That's basically saying what I would say. I don't believe Hill is convinced about Kenny. I mean, I've said this previously, John, on this program, other sports program, on Off the Board. Like, we don't have a talented team now. Let's be very clear. This is one of the weakest Irish teams we've had in years. We don't have a goal scorer. Okay, right? You know, if you look at the number of players we have in the Premiership compared to, you know, previous eras, like, you know, we're really struggling in that sense. And what he's done, he's brought, you know, a new era of Irish football and a new era of players who can play internationally. And if we're to be successful internationally, we can only be successful with the type of football that Kenny ultimately wants us to play in that sense. And hopefully we get some better players. I mean, over the last few days, I was thinking of Jack Grealish and Declan Rice. You know, those two players, the difference they would have made to this Irish team if they had, you know, been part of it in that sense. So I think that Kenny is a really good story in a lot of ways from that perspective. And I just don't believe that Hill has faith in him. And I think that, you know, when you read through it, you know, and even the point about the focus is getting on Euro 2024, if Kenny doesn't get results, you know, in the Euros, it's hard to see him survive beyond this under the currency year.
That's the tone of Philip Quinn's analysis anyway in that piece on page 73 of the Mail on Sunday. Just one other quick point to mention. David Kelly, alongside that Dan McDonnell article, is talking about what was on quite a few of the back pages, which is Vera Pauw is in talks about a new contract ahead of the World Cup, and David Kelly in the Sunday Independent writes, with Ireland's female players having achieved equal pay, it remains to be seen whether the cash-strapped FAI might afford the same deference to their manager as Pauw, appointed in 2019, discusses a second contract extension. Ireland men's team boss Stephen Kenny is on a salary reported to be around $500,000 per annum, has yet to qualify for a major tournament. Pauw, who is believed to be on a salary worth $150,000 before add-ons. So she is certainly negotiating from a position of strength. Does she walk in and say, well, if Kenny's on $500,000 and if the female and male players are on the same pay structure, albeit that's a less expensive gap for the FAI than $150,000 to $500,000, does Pauw go in there and say, well, I think $500,000 is appropriate here?
Well, I think she's in a very strong place to negotiate, and I think she is brave enough to go for it from the last, what we've seen from the last couple of years, and I also think that there's a reality, like we're talking about that 86-page document where she's all over it, her players are all over it, they are squeezing every bit of PR, marketability, this World Cup. They are going to take it for everything they can in terms of positive PR for the FAI and how it's progressive and all this sort of stuff. They'll milk it, and she's the one that's driving that. So how do you quantify her value? Is it just seats in the Aviva, what they fill, or is it all the other stuff and all the other positive publicity they're getting from her and what she's doing? And their players are everywhere. Everybody's talking about the Irish women's team. So how is it only seats in the Aviva Stadium that counts? And I don't think it is. I think we should be a little bit more nuanced or realistic about what her value is and her team is. And it's the first time ever. So and again, they want to be progressive, then make a statement. Make a statement what you're willing to put your money on the table for your women's manager. I think whether she'll get equal pay to Kenny, I doubt it, but I think she should push for it.
Certainly, I don't actually know what the payments are like across international women's football, Timmy, but she can certainly make a very strong argument. If Stephen Kenny is on that, then you need to put me very close to top of the tree amongst my counterparts in the women's game at a minimum.
And that's where I would be advising you, Joe, that she should focus on the counterparts in the women's game across the international scene, because it could be more than what Kenny's on. She shouldn't anchor herself to Kenny, because that might be less. We just don't know. At the top level, we just don't know. Like countries like the USA and stuff, we just don't know what they're paying. Some of the Middle Eastern countries, we don't know what they're paying at that level. But I think that the reality is she deserves to be rewarded contractually for her achievements. That's the most important point here. And whatever that contract is, obviously, is up to her and her people to agree. But she deserves to be rewarded. And the worry I'd have if you say, well, she should get the same as Kenny, then the danger is that, you're linking it to the men's situation. And if, the chapter only earning millions, that won't happen. You just end up with this, situation where one is linked to the other. If she should be paid her market value without any question. And if that's more than Stephen Kenny, it should be more than Stephen Kenny. If it's less, it should be less. It shouldn't be saying, that he gets X and I get X, and that's it. She should get what she's entitled to get across the international football, women's football world. Because what she has done with this team is phenomenal. She has done an incredible job. And, Cliodhna's point about, is it just about filling seats in the Aviva? That's a factor. There's no doubt that's a factor.
And they probably they go a long way towards, by the way, filling the Aviva come September time in their League of Nations game. So you feel like that day is coming very soon, if not this year.
And absolutely, and if you take that point, she has brought a team to a World Cup finals. That's historical, and and when she took over, they were not in any position to be going to Australia in the summer. So she deserves to be rewarded. Obviously, the contract that she was on, she felt when she signed it, it was appropriate. Maybe at that point, then we're on and we're in world football, but it's definitely not appropriate now if it's out of kilter with the top managers of women's teams in the world. And she definitely needs to be paid, in the higher echelons. There's no doubts in that because of what you're. Otherwise, you lose her. That's the reality. It's professional sport. Otherwise, you lose her. And I don't believe Ireland at this stage, need to lose. Or I think they need to keep her. As you say, the Nations Cup is starting in the autumn, and she needs to build now on what will happen in the summer. And hopefully, it'll be a successful summer for us in whatever way we perform down there. And she needs to build, and we need to keep her as part of that journey for a longer period than just the end of the summer.
Okay. Latest in the Munster Hurling final, as we suspected, the lead is changing hands. So Clare were 3 to the good at half time. It was 111 to 11 points. It's now Clare 114, Limerick 115 with 47 minutes on the clock. Jamesy is standing by. No, we'll get to Jamesy in a few moments' time and check in with him. But Clare 114, Limerick 115 is where we are after 47 minutes. Back in 1 sec.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Not sure where to start with your smart meter? Sign up to a Home Electric Plus smart meter price plan from Electric Ireland to see how much energy your appliances are actually using. Track your usage monthly, daily or even hourly and get tips and advice on how to use less. It's a smart start to controlling your energy usage. To sign up, search Electric Ireland Home Electric Plus. Smart meter and online account required. Features available after 4 months. T's and C's apply. See electricireland.ie.
Guaranteed Irish business members continue to sustain jobs and communities across Ireland, just like your local Topline DIY builders merchant, serving home, garden and building enthusiasts nationwide for generations. Don't miss Topline's great summer sale now on, with fantastic deals on garden furniture, like the fabulous Eden Rose rattan set, reduced by a massive €400, or on barbecues like Sahara 3-burner gas barbecue, now only €399. With over 160 stores nationwide, there's a Topline store near you. So look out for the G. Guaranteed Irish. Altogether better.
We all want to live in a world where everyone feels welcome and included. But where do we even start? How about right here, in our local communities? SuperValu is proud to sponsor the GAA Football All-Ireland Championship and to support the GAA at every level, because every time we welcome those from different backgrounds, every time we include all abilities, sexualities and genders, that's real action. Because at SuperValu, we believe community includes everyone.
Now I can hear myself think. And I like what's happened at Chapters with Arboretum. Through the door and it's still Chapters. Miles and miles of new and second-hand books at fantastic prices. And up the stairs, it's Arboretum. Indoor plants, everything you need for city gardening, irresistible food, and coffee. It's like your man said, if you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. Visit us today. Arboretum Urban Green at Chapters Bookstore, Parnell Street.
Do you want to take the next step in your career? At Atlantic Technological University, we can help you. Choose from over 350 online, flexible and postgraduate courses. Build accredited qualifications in science, engineering, business, nursing, education, computing and much more. From short courses to masters, work hard and thrive with a flexible learning experience designed to suit you. Apply now at atu.ie/flexible. ATU. Develop the skills you need to stand out.
Here at News Talk, we've got some exciting original podcasts. Here's a snippet from Show Me the Science with Professor Luke O'Neill, a weekly series that explains different topics through science.
You might call this the science of the mind of animals. How about that for a title? And for a long time, all through history, philosophers have wondered if animals are like us. In other words, do they have minds? Or are they just little machines in a way that respond instinctively and what have you, Now, how we define the mind, by the way, is being aware of the world around you, being able to think and being able to feel. That's what defines the mind. And it's always been different to the brain, kind of. The brain is the lump of thing in your skull where the mind is. We don't really know what the mind is, if the truth be told. It's something to do with the wiring of the brain, and when you have feelings and emotions and you can use your intelligence and all that kind of stuff, that's tied up in the mind. And the big question is, do animals have minds? And of course they do.
To hear the full podcast, go to newstalk.com, the Newstalk app powered by Go Loud, or wherever you get your podcasts. On 106 to 108 FM, on the Newstalk app powered by Go Loud and smart speakers. This is Newstalk.
A very good afternoon. I'm Lindsay Dolan. The Women of Honour Group are renewing their call for a tribunal to investigate allegations of bullying and sexual abuse in the Defence Forces. The group have today set out terms of reference for such an inquiry and will meet both the Taoiseach and Taoiseach tomorrow. Retired Army captain and spokesperson for the group, Diane Byrne, says any investigation must be transparent.
It needs to be a full tribunal of inquiry, because at this point it needs to have the public scrutiny and be held in the open so that the public know exactly what's going on. This is a real important issue that needs to be addressed at this point, and now we just need to get this tribunal underway.
Dublin City Council have confirmed it's facing unexpected expenses after a mix-up with its wages bill. It's understood more than 100 employees were mistakenly classified with the wrong class of PRSI. It said it's currently considering how the matter can be addressed. 1 in 10 Irish pharmacies are now losing money, with rural community chemists more dramatically affected. That's the key message from the Fitzgerald Power report on pharmacies, which highlights the need for an increase in the dispensing fee. A dispensing fee is what pharmacists charge when filling a prescription to cover costs of storing and preparing medication. President of the Irish Pharmacy Union, Dermot Toomey, outlined the main findings of the report.
1 in 10 pharmacies, community pharmacies, are loss-making currently, and a further 35% have an operating profit of less than 10%. So really what we're seeing is that many pharmacies into the future will be unviable unless there's a change in the core dispensing fee that the state pay for the core services. And this is something that we're looking to sit down with the Minister and the Department to discuss this going forward.
And finally, over 80,000 fans turned out to watch Harry Styles perform at Slane Castle last night. Harry Mania was in full flow as mega fans queued at the sold-out venue from as early as 5 o'clock yesterday morning. News reporter with the Irish Times, Shauna Bowers, said the atmosphere was electric.
It was just incredible, the atmosphere. Everyone was just so excited. There were just screams. Anytime there was even a slight movement on stage before he appeared, there was this apprehension. Oh, is he going to arrive? Is he not? When Harry was announced as the headliner, there was quite a lot of, oh, he shouldn't be here because of the rock heavy presence in Slane Castle in previous years gone by. But I think his show really proved those people wrong.
And that's your news for now.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Release your dad bod this summer with low-fare flights to Ibiza, Malaga or Zadar.
Dry in most areas with a chance of some scattered showers in the Midlands and the West. Highs of 20 to 24 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
You're very welcome back. Let's check in at the Gaelic Grounds. 54 minutes on the clock. Jamesy O'Connor is there. So from being 3 points to the good at half-time, Clare now starting to just be in danger of letting Limerick get away from them, Jamesy.
Yeah, Limerick have really come out strong in the second half, Joe. I mean, they've outscored Clare now. I think it's 1-8 to 2 points in that period, and Clare are in trouble. Critical, I suppose, Limerick got David Reedy had a really good score, from the throw-in, a ball that maybe Clare had and maybe lost. So that got Limerick rolling. Galland then a couple of frees. That was sandwiched between a good Tony Kelly score from Clare, but the critical score, the 44th minute, beautifully angled ball from the far sideline by David Reedy, angled in front of Galland. Keane Nolan 1-on-1, lost his Hurley, and in that situation Galland in on goal, just sidestepped it back. Rory Hayes was trying to get back in and buried it past Eibhear Quilligan, and Limerick since then, shortly after that again, Eibhear Quilligan pulled off a good save again when Galland was en route to goal. Jim Ryan made a great effort to get back, put maybe a little bit of pressure on him, and Quilligan pulled off a good save, but Clare very much under the pump, and Galland leading the way. I think he's won 111 now, Joe. That's including 1-3 from Peter Duggan. Great chance here. Ryan Taylor, he's fumbled it. Clare might get something out of it here, Joe, but they badly need a score. Dave Fitzgerald hasn't been in the game at all. And again, he's missed a chance, and Clare has said Clare in a spot of bother, Joe, because they're just struggling to get any traction at the moment. Tony Kelly now a chance to Clare badly need a score here. That's blocked again, and Kelly's had a couple of those, and Limerick again just clearing their lines, Joe, and Clare going to rue these chances because you can't afford to miss these opportunities. And Limerick, huge space in front of that full back line. Nolan has been replaced by Shane Amori, but I'm not sure if he's necessarily a full back. He's done well there. Peter Casey's on, but Limerick, as I said, very, very much on top, and Clare totally under the pump, Joe. Can't seem to win any ball in their own puck out, and they badly need a score just to get them back in the game. Now, still, listen, 15 minutes left, and Clare, Shane O'Donnell heading on goal. Yeah, he bangs that over, and that might get Clare rolling again. So 119 Limerick, 1:15, Clare. It's a hurling match, Joe. It's only four points, 15 minutes left. But Clare badly needs it now, and they're going to have to finish strong to pull this off.
Very good. Thank you, Jamesy. Jamesy O'Connor at the Gaelic ground. So again, 56 minutes in the clock, 4-point gap. Clare with the most recent score there, as you heard. Limerick leading by 4. We are going through the Sunday papers just before we wrap up, and the clock gets against us. We'll move on to the next topic. Cliodhna O'Connor here in studio. Timmy McCarthy with us as well. The LIV PGA Tour merger everywhere. Sports shows and very much beyond over the past couple of days. It seems to have caught the imagination. Pieces across the board. For instance, Tommy Conlon focuses in on McIlroy, I guess, as many people have, and well, he says it's quite a good line from this period on, really. McIlroy is going to reside in the penthouse suite of the world's strangest incarceration program. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't need the money, but now that he is there, they're going to pump the cash into him anyway, like a duck being force-fed to produce foie gras. So I'm not sure if Rory McIlroy sees his life that way, but Tommy Conlon does. All of the merger and the disruption of the past 12 months in golf was, of course, financed, as he writes, by the Public Investment Fund, founded in 1971 by the ruling family of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the PIF being the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. They're just shy of 700 billion at the moment. So you got to see that 700 billion as kind of pocket change to invest globally in everything from real estate to banking to technology to startups to healthcare to private equity, and of course sport is a fun thing and a profitable thing to invest in as well. The sports acquisition spree is the brainchild of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and also Al Rumian is in charge of it. He's now the chairman of this new entity involving the PIF and the PGA Tour. And so they've been going at golf for the last, say, 4 years, if you haven't followed this too closely. They started hosting the Saudi Open. McIlroy was offered $2.5 million just to play in that, so for 4 days of his time, and he turned that down. And he was asked if part of the reason he turned it down was because of where the money was coming from, and he said 100% there is a morality to it as well. Fast forward a couple of years, and it's all very complicated, and a lot has happened here. But in effect, really, PIF tried to invest in golf. Golf said no. PIF said fine. We have limitless money. We're setting up our own tour. They offered stupid money to lots of players. Lots of players took it, and they started what is in effect a war of attrition. So over the last year, the PGA Tour had to up the prize fund. The PGA Tour was involved in a legal dispute, again not dissimilar to Man City and UEFA, and it seems that the legal bill was already at 30-40 million just this year, and they haven't even gone into a courtroom yet. So that had the potential to drag on for as long as the Saudis felt like they wanted it to drag on. Not that they particularly were enjoying the court case either, because Discovery was going into areas of their regime that they didn't want it to go. So it made sense for both sides to come together. For the PGA Tour, their financial future is beautiful. They'll be funded by the PIF going forward. This new company will have Al Rumian as chairman and Jay Mullen, the PGA Tour commissioner, as CEO. The PGA Tour, in my opinion, are deluding themselves into thinking therefore they're in charge. They are most certainly not. I've seen Succession. I know how boardrooms work, and money is going to run the show. And that's kind of where we are. The LIV boys will, in the next year or two, depending on how much longer they pretend to keep the LIV Tour going, they'll saunter back on to the PGA Tour, having made, it depends on whether you're Phil Mickelson, in his case, the guts of 200 million, to Cam Smith, well over 100 million signing on fee. They'll waltz back in and say, well, that was a very profitable year or two away, and I suspect McIlroy and several others will bristle. Meanwhile, all of us looking on will think, well, here's another sport run by a regime that behaves despicably, is the truth, on so many fronts. But, well, they're running the world because they have 20% of the world's oil. So happy 2023 to you, Cliodhna. That's about the gist.
Yeah, thanks. That's very uplifting.
I know.
Yeah.
And that was McIlroy's demeanour, I thought, in his press conference during the week, one of resignation.
Yeah, he looks like someone who's worn down by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And in this, so Tommy Conlon talks about him, and Shane McGrath talks about him in the Irish Mail on Sunday. And same thing, you know, we're all, brilliant, Rory, and your morality and your ethics and fair play and fight the good fight and giving up his time for extra committees and meetings and all this stuff. And now it's, well, that was kind of pointless. Maybe just go back and focus on the golf again.
It's almost a degree, like the way people are talking of, like, that was a bit naive, really. I mean, the adults got in the room and they worked things out. Like, the last year was just saber rattling. It wasn't real.
I feel like saying, you know, what did you think was going to happen in the world that we live in now? Did you really think that this wouldn't end up this way? And even, you know, the fact that the main reason a significant reason that there's been some sort of an agreement is because now legal bills, we're actually both losing money here. So do you know what? The money is way more important than even us wanting to have our own tour. The money is the most important thing, and that's unfortunately just reality. Never mind any human rights issues or anything like that. Like, the money is the reality.
Yeah,
and that's. And it can be sobering to see that play out in action, but that's the reality.
Yeah, it's funny on the human rights aspect that Jay Monaghan is getting the most criticism for, as he was accused of doing by a survivors group, co-opting the 9/11 survivors. Because last year, like, if you're, again, I appreciate people aren't following all this in granular detail, but the basic, like, tactic of the PGA Tour was initially to say, oh, legacy, your legacy is important, stay with us. And all the players say, nah, I'll take the money. And then strategy number 2 was to go in for the morality play, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. And a lot of the players still said, well, I'm going anyway. And in the end, the PGA Tour stumped up money. But they don't really talk. The American media, I find anyway, Timmy, the human rights thing, again, I feel a bit like, I don't know, not to use Succession metaphors endlessly here, but on that election night episode, and there's no spoiler here, but when, like, Shiv brings up, but hang on, this is like a really bad precedent. Like, Rome turns to her and says, don't be such a bad president, don't be such a child. Like, what are you talking about? That's irrelevant. And I sort of feel like that's how the human rights aspect is treated at the moment here.
And that was always inevitable. So I think, last year, I think it was the Centurion Club in London where they had their first event. And I was actually in the studio with yourselves, and this came up. The LIV, conversation came up, and I can remember saying, look, they're professionals. These guys will go to LIV, they get money, and eventually it'll all come back together. They'll all come together again. Now, I didn't expect it genuinely, Joe, within a year. No. I really didn't expect that this would happen in a year. So that's the first thing. The second thing, if you look at the headlines, I mean, Shane McGrath says this shameful episode should alter how golf is seen for the award. Tommy talks about the choice between ethics and wallets. Paul Kimmage on the other page says golf's values used to offer refuge in a grubby world, but now golf is a grubby game. But ultimately, it's about money and sports washing. There's actually a piece as well in the Observer, page 9, by Will Unwin. Now, it's a football piece about Benzema joining Ronaldo in the kingdom, and others will follow. And the Saudis want to get the World Cup in 2030 because they defeated Argentina and Qatar. They believe that they have a chance of showing their potential, but they want to make their Saudi league a bigger league and attract better players in that sense. And obviously Benzema is a big player still in the sense of Ronaldo could have been at the end of his career, but Benzema is not definitely at the end of his career. So the whole idea, and I think Tommy Conlon called it out clearly when he says, one could argue that the House of Sword buying up golf, buying up sport, is not a vast enterprise in sports washing. But in fact, the opposite. If anything, the publicity accrued from these ventures seem to have exposed their crimes in a way that wouldn't have happened had the kingdom remained shrouded. Many people are paying attention now, but the reality is they don't care, and that's what his argument is, like, that the Saudi government don't actually care. So this money, the sports washing and the money they're putting in, that they don't care. They're actually normalizing. They're saying this is how we live our culture, and we're normalizing it. And by investing in all these sports, we're just sharing our experience, and whether you like it or not, we have the money. If I thought as well, Shane McGrath's point about McIlroy was a very interesting one. He said, yet the contention that McIlroy is a victim is entirely absurd. He has backed this deal, one of the grubbiest deals in sport history, and it will help him make and his players much richer, because McIlroy definitely was sold a pup by Jay Monaghan and by the PGA for the last 12 months. But himself and Padraig came out as realists this week and said, look, it's about money. It's good for the game, and there'll be more money in the game. And when you look at the LIV situation, when you believe that the guy who won the Centurion Club event in London last year earned more for that event, in a 54-hole event in their shorts and polo shorts, than the guy who won the Players Championship, who got 3.6 million. The guy who won the LIV got 4 million. this comes down to money. And ultimately, at the highest level of sport, in the professional sense, the professionals pay for money. So there can be morality. McElroy in 2019 didn't go across, and he said morality was one of the factors in that sense. He could have taken the appearance fee, so he definitely stood by his word. But now the reality is the PGA is in bed now with these guys. It's been going on for 6 months that he'll take the views of the conversations, and despite the fact that they're asking McElroy to go and do what he did.
Yeah.
So it's like morality, sports washing, Joe, all these things become irrelevant. What happens here is that these guys will get more money and they'll just pay for more money. And, in 5 years' time, it'll just be the norm. It won't be like the PGA was American and the DP World was European and LIV was Middle Eastern. It'll just be golf. But it'll be dominated, I believe, much more by the Public Investment Fund at that point then. Because once money gets in, Joe, it's really hard to stop the flow.
No, of course. I do agree totally, by the way, and have for a long time with Tommy Conlon. Sports washing is the wrong term for what's happening here. This is just Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf state countries. I think I was reading recently, they're 3% of the world's landmass, but they have just over half the world's oil. So that's a good deal. This is about them preparing for the post-oil economy, and sport is just one of half a dozen businesses that they're investing in. It does give them a certain prominence, it does normalise them a touch, but ultimately it is about money and the post-oil economy. Newcastle is going to be worth a hell of a lot more in 20 years than it is now, for instance. Same applies to this golf tour that they've recreated, and I guess, pragmatism rules, because there is something almost a touch naive or childish when, say, take the States for instance, because this is the PGA Tour. We do seem to talk about this issue as if this is the first dalliance between the world and, say, Saudi Arabia in this instance. So Saudi Arabia discovers oil in 1938. From that moment, America struck up a deal. We'll give you all the military equipment you want. We'll offer military protection. You give us oil. We're best friends forever since. And similar deals apply all across the world. The UK, Boris Johnson was on bended knee to MBS last year, trying to cultivate a relationship. And even just in the past week, the US Secretary of State is over in Saudi Arabia trying to repair relations post the Khashoggi murder and some of the things Biden said at that time about MBS being a pariah. But ultimately, that relationship, which dates to 1938, is going to be settled. So, it is funny when we're suddenly saying, "Oh God, Saudi Arabia are investing in golf." There is I don't know what we're expecting of our sport, really.
Yes, yeah. Why do we think sport is going to be any different?
Yeah.
We're talking about.
That's it exactly. Why do we think that? I don't know.
Well, because we have this naivety about the idealism around sport, and I think it's changed so much. This isn't a pure endeavour anymore. It's a massive entertainment global business.
Yeah.
And therefore it's subject to all the other global factors that every other big business is.
Yeah.
Just is.
Yeah. Let's push on. It's just the way of the world. We're not going to change it here. Final thoughts, GAA related generally then. So we've a couple of pieces we want to hit on before the clock comes against us. Nadine Doherty sets up the Ladies Football Championship very, very well, which starts next week. And in short, 12-team competition, straightforward format. Top two teams in each group go through to the quarterfinals with home advantage. And the teams who finish last have to stave off intermediate football. And she says, parallels, I think, with the All-Ireland Men's Football Series, that the groups are pretty predictable at the moment. Armagh and Mayo will come out of Group 1. Group 2 will be Donegal and probably Meath, who are obviously going through their own soap opera at the moment. Waterford may cause a shock, but probably not. Kerry Dublin out of Group 3. Group 4 will be Cork Galway, and then things will get moving. So she says, actually, the last 10 days has had a soap opera quality and been pretty interesting and whetted the appetite me than elsewhere, but that's kind of how we're set up for the Ladies Football Championship. And her point is, once the inevitability of the group stages are done, Cliodhna, then it would be no harm if we had a bit of drama in this championship kicking off.
Yeah, and I think Nadine is right. I'm mad interested to see what's going to happen in Meath, to be honest. That was a challenge for their new manager to come in. I think David, maybe two games in 8 or something, so really difficult for him. And now some of the old guys coming back in to help Jenny Rispin keep the show on the road, so I'm interested to see how that goes. And then you've Cork and Kerry. So Cork whipped Kerry in the Munster final, which nobody saw coming. Kerry would be disappointed with it. So I think once, as Nadine says, once we get to the latter end, it's unpredictable. It's probably more unpredictable than it
has been. She was saying the league was very predictable, and once we got into provincial finals, that Cork Kerry game, and the machinations behind the scenes in Meath and elsewhere, that it's suddenly given it a bit of a jolt, maybe.
I think so, which it needs. It's and I mean, Meath have dominated the last 2 years, and that was something new and something everyone got very excited about that. But I think another little shift is on the way, perhaps.
If the Ladies' Championship needs a jolt, Joe Brolly on the same page, the men's football needs like a revolution almost. So I don't know, anecdotally I've never heard people as down about men's Gaelic football as I have this year. I really haven't, and I'm kind of down on it myself actually. I have found it very, very hard going. There have always been bad games for sure, but it feels like we're getting the same type of bad game over and over now. Like there's this kind of homogenous quality to the possession-based, risk-free football played at no pace. Like if I just have to sit through one more episode of these players jogging across the pitch in possession to fist pass it to the player 15 yards across the pitch who's coming in the opposite direction, and then rinse, wash, repeat. You know, it is tough going. You'll have seen this type of Joe Brolly piece before, really. He's just laying out where we are, the McGuinness revolution, and he cites baseball where Moneyball, as brilliant as it was when it first emerged in baseball, it was imitated, and so it kind of ruined the game for a while. It became incredibly boring. Everybody started mimicking the Moneyball approach, and the powers that be in baseball changed the rules and just punished negativity, and it's actually led to a real resurgence in attendances and TV viewership in baseball. And he's saying, look, sometimes you have to intervene. Rugby intervenes all the time. Curious for both your thoughts on this. Cliodhna, one, diagnose the extent of the problem. Like, is it not always thus, and are we, we have this conversation every year, or is this actually a touch worse than you've seen over the last, say, 20 odd years, and then we'll follow on from there as to whether we need rule changes? As bad as people are saying?
I think it's become quite ingrained, generally speaking, and just from being on the ground coaching, Joe Bryce says the cold tyranny of statistics. Statistics are really ruling coaching at the minute, and in some ways, why wouldn't they be? Your job as a coach is to deliver a win, and if this is how you think the best way it's going to happen, then you're going to do it. You're going to say, oh no, that's not nice football, I'm not going to play it. I'll choose to lose. Coaches aren't going to do that,
and nobody, to be fair, is naive enough to think that their only obligation is not just winning. Everyone gets, a coach shouldn't be worried about the entertainment value.
Exactly. So I think that teams have become so good at it that now we need somebody, if we're not going to change the rules, we need somebody innovative that finds a new way.
Pep.
Yeah, bring Pep to Gaelic games, maybe that'll solve our problems. Although his love of consistency mightn't work out.
Let's exert total control. I think, Pep is not on approvingly at the approach here.
Say, well done everybody, keep it going.
That was nice.
What I think about the rule changes, though, if we're going to do that, it can't be the tinkering. There has to be a clear vision of how do we really want the game to be played, and then once you have that, otherwise you're just tweaking small things. Make it 2 hand passes in a row or something. You don't that's not based on a really clear vision of what you want for the game.
And that's such an interesting point. Are we even in agreement as to how we want her GAA to be played? Sorry, I'm just glancing up at the hurling. I think all the fans are on the pitch, but the game isn't over yet, so that's a bit distracting. Is Jamesy there? We'll try and get Jamesy in a second. The players are staying on. I think there's time to be played, and the referee's trying to get everybody off the pitch. Yeah, we'll just go over to Jamesy. I'm just getting distracted here. John Kiley's trying to chase children off a pitch. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Eibhear Quilligan, Will O'Donoghue with a chance was hooked. I mean, there's 1 point between the sides, Joe. 123, 122.
Limerick ahead by a point.
Limerick ahead by 1. It's been helter-skelter. Eibhear Quilligan let a ball go wide, then took a quick puck out. And I don't know, for whatever reasons, suddenly there were Limerick supporters, young lads all over the field, whatever. You'd imagine that he's about to blow his whistle. Dermot Burns could be turned over. Shane O'Donnell has it. Oh, surely a free ref.
Impartiality, please, Jamesy.
Yeah, you might. Hopefully, he gives Clare one chance, and we get a chance of extra time. Yes, surely, ref. Come on, ref. Oh, you must be joking me, Liam Gordon. Final whistle gone, Joe.
No free, I'm taking it, Jamesy.
No free. Limerick 123. Clare 122. We wanted extra time, Joe.
And was it actually a free? And we're relying on you here.
I thought it was a free. Listen, I'm biased. Clare goggles on, but Clare, in fairness, just after putting themselves in a hole, Joe. I mean, last time I spoke to you, Limerick had really taken a grip on it. They'd outscored Clare 1-8 to 2 points in the first kind of 15 minutes of the second half, but they dragged themselves, and they were 119 to 115 I think down at that stage, but they dragged themselves back into it. However, I mean, they 12 wides, 6 of those in the second half to Limerick's 4, dropped a couple of chances into Nicky Quaid's hands, and they'll be gutted because again, Joe, they gave it absolutely everything in that last quarter. Ian Galvin came off the bench, made a big contribution. He was busy, got 2 good scores from play. Shanahan got a point from play. Limerick, Adam English came on as a temporary sub, he nailed one. Carl O'Neill, I thought, finished really strongly. He got a couple of huge points from play, but both sides out in their feet at the end, Joe. I mean, giving it absolutely everything. And
sorry, Jamesy, I'm just seeing a replay. 100% Clare should have had a free.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean,
man taken out off the ball, 100%. In fact, it could be a red card as well.
Listen, again, I mean, Liam Gordon, these are the marginal calls in which games are won and lost. But look, at Clare lost nothing in defeat. But again, look at hats off to Limerick. I mean, what a side. Gillan was brilliant. Now, quiet in the last quarter, but I mean, I think he'd won 11, Joe, man of the match, obviously. 1-3 from play, nailed all the frees, and he was a threat throughout. And Keane Nolan just on a card, as I said early on, lost his hurley for the goal, slipped once or twice as well. When it's just that angle ball, and you're trying to twist and turn, and obviously they've got a hold of each other before the ball comes in. So Clare eventually had to get him off. Got Paul Flanagan in there. He came in for a finish. Shane O'Morey came in initially, but Clare is at the third quarter. That's when it got away from them. 3 points up at half time. Outscored, as I said, 1-8 to 2 points in that period. Just couldn't get any traction, and as I said, that's they were chasing from there to the end. Now listen, they fought manfully and did really well to get back into it, but they'll feel aggrieved, Joe, at the end that wasn't a free, and probably with some justification. And at that stage as well, the crowd coming onto the pitch, it certainly didn't help, because Ever Quilligan had, as I said, got the ball away for a puck out. The linesman, or the umpire, I think, had called it wide when Quilligan maybe had thought that the ball was still in the field of play. The ref then blew the whistle to tell him to go back in. Then the crowd invade the pitch. That takes another minute to get them off, and it didn't help Clare at that stage. But there's a sea of green and white now down in front of me. Listen, 5 Munster titles in a row, Joe. You have to credit their willpower, their desire. Thought their backs were excellent. Gillan obviously brilliant up front on a day when Tom Morrissey, Hegarty, those guys didn't fire, but they all over the field, they worked their socks off. And as I said, look at just Joe, it mightn't have been I don't know what the neutrals will make of it. It mightn't have been an epic, but it was claustrophobic, it was tense, it was savagely hard fought, and probably in terms of the Munster Championship, a final that it probably deserved. It mightn't go down as good as last year's, probably wasn't as free flowing or as high scoring, but by God, was it tense, was it claustrophobic, and the narrowest margin again once more between these two sides.
This must be a record year in the Munster Championship for either draws or 1 point wins. Must be.
But I suppose, look at it, just shows how little between the top 4 sides, and certainly the pack have made ground on Limerick now. Clare's still the only team probably to get their nose in front, and ask Brian Lohan, he'd have preferred to have the 1 point win today rather than 6 weeks ago, whenever it was. But Clare aren't done, and you'd certainly hope that they can pick themselves up, Joe. They've got Dublin or Carlow. Assume that'll be Dublin in the quarter final. Again, it's a bananas game, but you'd like to think that there's something still left in them, and they'll still have a say in this championship. And Limerick, as good as they were, still wouldn't fancy meeting Clare again, but credit to them, hats off to them. Dan Morrissey, Barry Nash, rock solid, I thought, at the back. Burns again, just good defensively. Kyle Hayes again led the charge at the end. He kept coming out with ball. What an engine he has. But it was another titanic struggle, Joe, and as I said, Clare just 1 point short, and it's cruel, and sport is cruel, but they've got to pick themselves up now. There's still lots of hurling to be played this year from their perspective.
Okay, Jamesy, thanks so much.
Cheers, Joe.
Limerick 5 in a row. Back to the papers. We're here with Cliodhna O'Connor and Timmy McCarthy. I was just in the throes making the point that it's an interesting point you raised, Cliodhna, about the type of football that we want to see, because I'm not even sure everybody can agree on that. For instance, I have no doubt that there'd be like a healthy quotient who would say, well, number one, I want fielding back, and we should have a rule whereby goalkeeper has to kick the ball past the 45 so we have fielding. Like, I'm not sure I'm in that quotient, because there is something a bit unsophisticated about that. I think like that kind of stops innovation. So I don't know if I want to go fully down that route, but then do I groan a bit when the keeper rolls it out and kicks it out to the cornerback? A little bit. So even like there, in terms of what football we want to see, I don't want to see like close your eyes and boot it up the pitch. But I understand lots of people who would. So even trying to get that agreement, let alone the right rule to get the type of football that we might want to see together, is doubly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely complex, and I do know the GAA are trying to get a handle on that in terms of their vision for the game, which I think is important. They should be taking the lead on it, which they are. But I think your point is right. Like you often these things are sorted by or change happens because someone finds a better way.
Yeah.
Someone shows a way. Oh, you can actually counteract that by doing this.
What if this is the best way to play Gaelic football? Lots of people behind, very conservative in possession, keep control of the game. What if like the Roscommon point against Dublin is now to be talked about as, well, that is the zenith?
Well, then everyone's going to become a hurling fan, aren't they?
I know.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily, because I think there's always different ways of doing things.
Okay. What do you got for me? Timmy, are you as down on the product, not to use that awful word, but the quality affair for the neutral this year more so than, I don't know how far back you want to go?
I think the game has evolved in a negative way, which is probably the bigger point. So I think that, and this year, is the culmination of that negative evolution. I believe GAA needs to evolve, and I think it needs to evolve in a positive way. And whatever, Cliodhna's point is very important. You need to have a very clear vision about how you want this game to be played. But this, the whole thing about possession is, as a coach, as a GAA coach, you want possession, you want to keep possession. But now we've got to the point where we're going back from their 45 all the way back to our goalkeeper to keep possession, and start the journey all over again in that sense. And so creativity is being squeezed in the game at the moment. Individuality is being squeezed in the game at the moment. And, we need to find, a structure that allows, talent be seen. We need to allow systems. I mean, there are systems in all sports. We need to allow systems be seen. But we need to allow systems be seen in our natural sport that is entertaining. And I'm a coach, so as a coach, I want to win. I want my team to perform, and if we perform often enough, we get the results. That's the reality of coaching, in my experience. So getting the performance, and then you ultimately do enough. Within the tank, you get enough W's when you need. But as a fan, I want to be entertained. I want to see the best players perform at the highest level, and I want to see creativity and innovation. And I don't want to see it stifled. And we're stifled, Joe. We're just stifled at the moment in that sense. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, a big GAA guy, and I said, why don't you have a rule like basketball that you can't cross the half line? You can't go back over the half line once you cross it. I said, that's stupid. I said, why is it stupid? Because it forces you to think completely differently about how you play the game. No, I'm not saying that's the right. That's the right rule for the game.
Yeah. And sorry,
the concept is, Joe, do something different.
And the other wrinkle, of course, is this isn't, the elite of the elite. Let's make a rule change. You want club players playing exactly the same sport for obvious reasons as the elite. So, I mean, when people talk about a shot clock, I mean, take a tour of all the pitches of Ireland and ask every referee how that's going to work out.
And also, Joe, when you think about, like, as you say, the underage, what's very sad to see at the moment in many underage games is 15 men behind the ball. These are young, children like who are learning the freedom and expression of themselves and their teammates and the teams and the sport. And, coaches have 15 men behind the ball. It's like, why? Like, let's
to win the game.
Skills.
To win the game.
Yeah, and I've always loved winning. Okay, so I'm pretty clear on that. But the point is that we've got to find a way to teach the kids the skills, the values, the importance of learning to play as an individual, to learn to play as part of a team, learn to play with your teammates in a skillful way, okay, and not just win a game, because winning game is false to it. In reality, I mean, Clare lost today by a point. That doesn't mean they won't win the All-Ireland. So winning a game can be false. You can win. I mean, I've no doubt Cliodhna has been involved in games where I've been involved in games where we won games that we weren't really probably deserving of, and we lost games that we were deserving to win. That's just the way sport is in that game. But if it's all about just winning, ultimately, if it's just about winning, then you get the evolution that we're now finding ourselves involved with in football. But there's a way out of it. But we just need to make sure that it's well taught. And it's not a case of, I think, you must keep beyond the 45 or, you must have a shot up. You must think about, and the grassroots. And that's one thing soccer does well internationally. It's a common game internationally. You play the same rules, whether you're, that. So I hope that this culmination of the stifling world we found ourselves in will be the start of the next journey. And I believe the next journey and its evolution will be better for GAA going forward.
Yeah. Cliodhna, I'll give you a final word. Like a set number of players being kept in your attacking half is another rule change which people have suggested probably is a bit more enforceable for referees. It does feel like we are on the cusp though of rule change, because I would suspect most teams, particularly against equal or better teams, would be of the opinion that 13, 14, if not at times 15 behind the ball is just by dint of physics the best tactic, and we're all fit enough now to get numbers forward when we do turn the ball over. Like, it's just so in vogue, and very hard to turn around to Mayo against Louth and say, come on, break them down. And I think that tactic of people behind the ball is a great leveler. So if you're playing someone above you, you want to stifle the game. You don't want to allow any creativity. So you can see the rationale for it, absolutely. And if a manager went out and didn't do that against a better team and lost, we would all be slamming that manager for being naive. Exactly.
Why would you do that? Your job is to win the game. And Timmy's point about creativity is important. The best managers, and maybe that's when you need those star players, and often change comes when you've got a certain player who can do a certain thing. Yeah. Think of Kieran Donaghy, think of Jack McCaffrey. They had an X factor, and all of a sudden that changed something about how that team operated, because they had a system but it allowed for these people to shine. So I think a lot of it, there's been a gap in Gaelic football, the top teams and everybody else, and I think that's why this has also encouraged this to become more in vogue, because it is a leveller and people are trying to close gaps.
It will be interesting to see how it all plays out. We are way past our time, unfortunately. Didn't get to everything we wanted to get to, but Cliodhna O'Connor here in studio and Timmy McCarthy with us on the line. Thanks to you both.
Joe, appreciate can I just say one thing?
Yes, Timmy, shoot.
I just wanted to just say, obviously it was a very tragic week in Cork with the passing of Teddy McCarthy.
Yeah.
And one of Cork's beloved, obviously dual winner in 1990, and somebody who, basically was the epitome of what GAA, is about in its best pomp in both hurling and football. And just to say, his family, his friends, and his clubmates, my sincere condolences on his passing. It was just very sad and very tragic to see it this week.
Yeah, and Cliodhna had picked out a piece by Mick Foley on Teddy McCarthy, so my fault for us not getting to it, but well said. Thanks to you both. We'll take a very short ad break.
Off the ball on News Talk. The Pat Kenny Show.
If you're a person living at the end of a bad road in County Kerry or up in any part of the country today in a rural area and you're travelling